We're gonna go ahead and get started. So recognizing the weather is what the weather is. We have a light agenda tonight. We're going to keep an eye on it. If it tends to get worse, we're going to go ahead and push things off the agenda so that everybody can get home safe tonight. But we only have a few things, and so I think we can keep it focused and get going. Anything from you, Tammy? All right. Let's kick it off with drought response.
Yay.
And it is a little bit ironic, so Emily is gonna kick us off.
It's good.
Oh, Chris is. Oh.
It's all good. Hey, well, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members. We're the Parks and Rec Department's got a couple presentations tonight. We'll start off with the drought response. Emily Hunt, the Executive Director of Utilities and Infrastructure, will kick us off with current conditions, specifically outside. And then Bob Keys will talk about the Parks Department response, and then we'll finish up with Doug Fisher, who's the superintendent of Thorn Creek Golf Course, who I don't think you guys have ever met. So Doug will finish us off with the Thorn Creek response. So with that said, Emily, let's get started.
Thanks, Chris. So just quick recap of how we got here. As council recalls, back in March, you issued a stage 1 drought declaration given water supply conditions and projected storage levels. We implemented water use rules and regulations effective March 15th. And our goal this year is to save 10% of the 25 usage. So on the right side of this slide, you'll just see kind of the highlights of the rules and regs that are in place right now. We made it to May 1st. We asked our customers not to turn on their lawn sprinkler irrigation systems. Parks did the same thing. Now that we're in May, customers are limited to 2-day-a-week watering, obviously not during the hottest times of the day. Continue to want to have customers save their trees, their perennials, annuals, those can be watered as needed. We are issuing permits for folks that need to install turf or new sod or seed. Large properties can apply for a variance if they're not able to comply with those 2-day-a-week watering schedules. And similar to parks, they're still required to save 10%. They just have a little bit more flexibility in how they do that. Get a lot of questions about pools, hot tubs, fountains, that sort of thing. As long as they're using recycled water, it's fine. And we're encouraging folks to limit car washing to 1 day a week at home, try to use commercial car washes that recycle water, that sort of thing. So lots of other rules and regs, but these are the highlights of what is in place, and these are mandatory, not discretionary at this point. So quick check-in, it's been a month and a half. Our current reservoir storage is where we would like to see it right now, 79% of average, or 79% of capacity, which is good news. Year-to-date water consumption, we're actually even better than this right now because we just got our April numbers in. So we're around 3% below 2025, which is fantastic. And I did just want to take a quick note. We had a regional drought call last week with all of the various water utilities, and there was a bit of an around the room on how folks were doing. We were the only utility who saw a decrease in consumption over 2025. Not everybody reported out, but a lot of utilities reported out increases over 2025. So Fort Collins reported a 6% increase. Highlands Ranch is 12% year-to-date higher than last year. Longmont's 8%. Parker was 15%, and South Adams, who provides water to Commerce City, was 5%. So just great job to our customers, to Parks. The fact that we're below last year's consumption is completely having to do with the fact that council acted quickly on this. And we had a feeling that we'd be over last year if we didn't act, and the way that these other utilities are showing up kind of demonstrates the need to act early. So just wanted to highlight that. Our June 30th, 2027 projection still continues to be lower than we would like to see, which is why we're on restrictions right now. The drought conditions across the state, like 2 hours ago, they weren't improving, but now we could probably say they're slightly improving. So that's good news. So everything is on track. The plan is going according to the plan, and we don't recommend any changes at this point in time in our drought response. So
Before you move on, Justin?
Yeah, so I had a question about the
the monitoring of the sprinklers. So we're in May now, sprinklers are allowed 2 days a week. Before that, they were not. Was hand watering lawns permitted? When you're not using the final sprinkler system?
We were really encouraging people to not turn their sprinkler systems on. A lot of folks did get out there with their hoses, hand watered dry spots, and that was fine. We did not issue any warnings or citations.
I think they're like not being, so the feedback I have from residents, or several residents actually, who have been concerned about this, because this is actually a really big, you know, I've got a lot of discussions already about what to do, what to do. And one of the big pieces of feedback that I got was that there was unclear on hand watering. Because some people were told, like as you said, they were encouraged not to do it. They interpreted it as they're not allowed to do it. And then other people didn't get that same feedback, and they talked to each other and they, well, why did they say this to you and not me? And it has caused some frustration when they call the department. So I think that we should at least have a plan for that, or be prepared to maybe even just decide to be consistent on what we tell them, no matter what. We're not gonna allow hand water, and we're not gonna allow it, but I don't know how that could work into our policy. That's just what I'm getting it. Surprisingly, to me, actually, there's a ton of people reaching
Yeah.
out, so yeah, it makes sense though.
Thanks for that feedback. So just a kind of a reminder of how we're trying to get the word out. We do have a direct mailer that went out on Friday to every Thornton resident, so that you should be receiving those. Your constituents should be receiving those this week. They do have a lawn watering guide, the recommended number of minutes for different types of sprinklers. We continue to do social media posts, Water Smart messaging, that's our customer portal. We've got multiple, each city voice, we've got articles in there. Bus shelter ads are out there. We'll be at Thornton Fest. We do have physical pamphlets at the rec centers, that sort of thing, that have actual rules on it and don't just send people to the website, so that people can get information directly. So lots of communication. And this is kind of what our customer response looks like to date. You can see our phone calls are way up. The emails that we've been receiving are way up. My Thornton is also up. We're really asking people to report any water use concerns or violations through My Thornton. That's the most effective way to do it. So if you have constituents, if you could direct them to My Thornton for those concerns, that would be fantastic. The Water Smart community conversations, again, those are kind of back and forth messaging that we get through our Water Smart portal, so those are up. We have been issuing warnings, we have been issuing violations. Some of these are leak repair violations and warnings, some of them are water use rules violations. Now that we're into the May restrictions, we anticipate these to just keep rise. And then just as a segue into the parks presentation that's coming up, I wanted to give council a little bit of context for just how much water parks uses compared to the rest of our city customers. And so you see our overall usage citywide, all of our customers is just around 24,000 acre feet a year. Parks uses about 17,000 acre feet. So they represent about 7% of the city's whole demand. So parks water usage is a really important driver, but you can see that our residential customers are really the big users. And so it is important that parks and the golf course do their part, but it's just a part of the equation there. So, and you'll also see kind of Thorn Creek's usage compared to the rest of the city usage. So that's just a little bit of background and state of where we're at right now. And I'll turn it over to.
Before you move on, Drew?
Emily, quick question. So with the residential usage, 74% of the total usage is from residential, but I think I saw in your stats that is it 50% is irrigation
That's right.
of that total use? Okay.
That's right.
So that's not residential, like interior use, that is
Yes.
74%.
It's the combined inside, outside use for residential. Yep. So.
Justin?
Sorry, I had a thought on the last. I did when you were talking about customer response. You said my Thornton app was the easiest way, but if there are other ways to report violations, okay.
Folks can email water@thorntonwater.com. They
Is
can,
there a way to do it anonymously?
we would keep people anonymous. Probably a phone call is the best way to do it
A phone
anonymously.
call?
Yeah,
Well, that's good to know.
yeah.
There are some people who are a little worried about making reports, whether it's code or
Sure.
water, because their neighbors have actually come to their door threatening them. So, yeah, just,
Understood.
I'll let them know that phone call is probably the best way.
Yeah, and they can get to us either through the utility or through utility billing.
All right.
All right, and council member, my Thornton, you can use that anonymously too. You don't have to put your name in there.
Okay.
So that is another opportunity for them if they're concerned with that. So I'll jump in here. Thank you for the opportunity to sit and chat with you tonight a little bit about our parks and open space response to stage 1 drought. As Emily mentioned, look, our goal is to save a minimum of 10% of our water usage over last year's 2025 usage. And that includes our potable and non-potable systems. Part of the metric for evaluation is primarily based on potable irrigation, but we are also, our goal is to save at least 10% of our non-potable as well, because we believe that resource may be limited also. So as Emily mentioned, our goal in parks and open space is that we'll continue to prioritize our trees, shrubs, and our sports turf, which we also call programmed areas or functional turf areas. Goes by several different monikers. We will continue to prioritize our irrigation repairs over all other non-safety related repairs and maintenance requests that come through. We'll continue each day to ensure that our irrigation systems are operating as efficiently and effectively as possible. One of the ways that we'll accomplish that task is part of our levels of service is that we normally check our irrigation systems 1 time a week. Each parks worker for their areas, once a week, monitors the irrigation system, runs it, checks the heads to make sure everything is functioning properly. Now we're going to try to do that 2 times a week, 3 times if we have old systems that are cantankerous. And then one of the ways that we're going to limit that water usage during that check is normally it takes about 9 minutes a zone for it to cycle. And that's primarily so that the parks employee can see and make sure that the rotors are operating full and the spray patterns are effective and efficient. I have put I don't want to say mandate. I've suggested that my staff try to cut that down to 5 minutes per zone. That's going to make them move around a little bit more, and hopefully we can keep connection with our devices. But that's one of the ways that we're going to continue to realize that 10% water savings. Also, we're going to utilize our non-potable water sources whenever those are available. Our current existing non-potable irrigation systems are Grange Creek Park, Woodland Brookshire, Cherry Park, Riverwalk Ball Fields, the Thornton Sports Complex, Carpenter Park, one other one that I can't recall. Community Park, but that one's not online yet. That one's part of a grant process to reestablish those wells. So those are some of the ways that we're going to continue to realize that. And then we'll also monitor kind of real-time data with our AMI, that's the automated metering infrastructure. We work with Emily's team in getting that data. And it's like up to the minute. If we've got a break, it lets us know instantly that there's an issue. We have an email program that all of our parks employees are part of. They monitor it regularly. And if we miss it, her team reaches out to us and says, hey, Grange Creek Park or wherever it looks like you may have a break. So we'll continue to utilize that. Next, this slide just is kind of some of the things that you might expect to see in our parks as we are going through this stage 1 drought response, right? Parks are going to look a little different. Our right of ways, our medians, all those things are going to look a little different than we're used to. And that's really so that we can realize that 10% water savings. We are part of the goal is maintaining that and realizing a 10% water savings, but also realizing that we have significant infrastructure investments that have made in our 70-year history that if we abandon, we have tremendous impacts to us. So that's kind of a secondary goal for us, so that we'll continue to water those high-use turf areas, including those high-use, high-frequency visited parks like Margaret Carpenter and Trailwinds. As I had mentioned, you're gonna see parks watering during the day outside of that 6 PM to 10 AM window. But that's so that staff can monitor and make sure that that the systems are working efficiently and effectively. So if you get a resident that's asking, hey, I saw them in Carpenter Park at 1 PM watering, likely that is what's going on. We're either making a repair and fixing that or ensuring that the systems are operating effectively. We are decreasing our watering times so that we're limiting any amount of runoff. We're making sure that our heads are, whenever possible, not hitting any hard surfaces. It's not always possible, but that's part of it. And we are those low frequency areas. And if you'll notice, like out in front of Carpenter Park, out along Colorado, that is kind of desert brown right now, right? We consider that a low use, non-functional turf area, and we're going to continue to decrease that water on there. Those are the ways that when we're watering our sports fields, and if we have to water our sports field at 90% or 95% of our normal use so that that sports field is safe for play, then we've got to make up that somewhere else in our system. And those are the places that we're going to be making that up, right? So you'll see an impact to those areas. They're going to be browner than you would typically see them, right? And then as Emily mentioned, we have drought response signage that her team helped us with and developed. So we're going to strategically deploy that signage out in our parks to just continue to get the message out and educate folks. This is why you see what you see. Here is another slide that just talks about some of the noticeable changes. That non-functional turf, our right-of-ways, detention basins, low traffic use areas, those are going to stay dormant and dry and desert-like. We will continue, and you will see staff out hand watering trees and shrubs. That way we can make sure that that's kind of point source irrigation. We're getting the water right to the plant that we need it. We're going to continue our naturally Thornton process of converting high water use plant materials to low water and native use plants whenever that's a viable option. And we'll include hardscaping as part of that also. Part of our noticeable changes that you will see too is we're going to reduce our turf mowing frequency. So we have a group of employees that now we're going to have some time available. So we're going to redirect that staff normal schedule to start doing some additional native vegetation management, things that we just haven't been able to get to in the past. And healthy native vegetation is fire resilient and is water wise. So we're going to continue to utilize that staff to do that.
Or you move on,
Go ahead,
Justin.
Real quick question.
Yeah.
So when you guys are going to the natural Thornton program, what's the priority in terms of areas? Like, do you already have it prescribed as this is the next right away area, or is it determined in a different way?
So it really right now it's based on opportunity for impact, right? We had in many years ago, there were, trying to be kind here, we weren't really successful in our naturally Thornton installations, council member. So we had to learn and step back and learn what we did wrong as a community, as a city. And now we are going back to those areas. Grove Park is a prime example. Margaret Carpenter Park is a prime example that we are fixing those things. We have revised our management plan and process to get that native vegetation established. So really our priority now is going to those about 70 acres that we're killed off bluegrass prior and getting those back where they're healthy and they are a good representation of naturally Thornton. And then we'll start to work on prioritizing the next areas, whether that's right-of-ways, really detention ponds that don't have any programmed activity. You know, some of our detention ponds might have a playground in them, but some don't. So those are easy places to get in and have an impact and reduce the water.
Okay, yeah, I recall seeing a presentation a couple years ago about the transition phases
Mhm.
from like the Kentucky bluegrass to we expect to see it kind of look like it dies out and then.
Yeah.
But what, can you go a little bit of background on what you mean by where we failed in some areas in the past? What kind of failures, like the vegetation died or we got pushback from the community? What do you mean?
I think it was a multitude of missteps, right? I think on the park side, we didn't do a good job of educating and getting the information out there and doing a good job to say, here's what you can expect to see in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because really, these establishments, to do them well is a 5-year process where you really start to see these things pop. So that was one of our failures. Another failure was that we didn't do a good job of mitigating the grass and the weeds going in. So we had a lot of pressure that outcompeted our natives. So that's just 2 examples.
Okay, yeah.
And then we tried to add compost and all kinds of things that you think bluegrass needs that our natives don't.
Yeah, okay, thank you for
Yeah.
outlining that, and then, like, on the communication side,
Mhm.
I'd like to, maybe in the follow-up meeting, get an update on what kind of changes that we made in the communication side of that. And how it fits into the overall communication strategies for the Parks Department and the rest of the city, because I think there's a lot of moving pieces there. I'd just like to see what kind of different efforts they are and how we can help as council members, because we have great relationships with the community itself and, a lot of us are really good at communicating with them. So let us know how we can help as well.
Will do. Thank you. Yeah. So back to our slides. These are just some of the current conditions that you'll see out there in the parks and will likely see through stage 1 drought response. Our community regional parks like Margaret Carpenter and Trailwinds, these areas that are non-functional are gonna stay brown and dry. Our neighborhood parks, those are things like Homestead Hills and a few others like that that are a park larger than 5 acres. Those also are gonna stay, they're gonna stay brown if they're not programmed turf. Our pocket parks, Aspen Park, Loomis Park, all those small little very tight pocket parks are gonna look just like you see them here, unless we get many more days like today, they're gonna look like this. And then here's some examples of our sports fields, and you can see I know it's kind of hard to tell in the one that says sports fields, how green the sports turf is as opposed on the other side of the walk. And that's bluegrass turf that is just allowed to stay dormant and dry. So that's where that kind of stark difference of sports fields and those program spaces, what they're gonna look like while we're in stage 1 drought response. And our trail corridors, even the irrigated ones are gonna be dry. And if you'll notice in that open space picture below, that's a non-irrigated open space. And you see how green that vegetation is. That's just an example that native vegetation does well in a drought response. Some of our ongoing strategies that we have been utilizing for the last couple of years to continue to move to a water wise and water efficient system are, we use soil moisture sensors in our irrigation systems, micro drip irrigation when appropriate, weather-based smart irrigation controllers, ET-based irrigation programming, evapotranspiration, a big word that basically means you water to the demand. We're trying to improve our soil moisture retention, and we do that through a couple methods with soil deep tine aeration, and we try to improve that soil structure also. sub irrigation for all of our annual pots and containers that you see. Those are very similar to what it says, right? Very self-explanatory. It's a basin in the bottom of those containers. Staff fill up, and then the water is drawn up through capillary action to the roots of the plants. You don't have anybody spraying a hose, so the water's right to the plants where it needs to be. Super efficient way. And terrace seeding of our sports and natives. That's a new process that we started last year. It was developed by a local company to do non-irrigated native installations. And the terrace seeding provides soil, compost, fertilizer, and seed in all-in-one application. And we started doing it on our natives last year and on our sports fields this year, and we found a tremendous amount of success with that. So this last slide for me is just something to show some of those potential impacts that we talked about, that not irrigating and not watering is simply not an option, right? This city over 70 years has invested too much in our tree canopies and in our turfs to turn our backs on it. That's why being efficient and effective is super critical. Currently, we have a little over 18,000 trees that have a value to the city, and would cost us about $27 million to replace those trees. In our parks, we got about 2,600 acres, and simply the cost of the seed to replace them, that's not labor, that's nothing else other than the cost of the seed, is a little over $6 million to replace them. So you can see simply by looking at that turning our backs on our irrigation and not doing a thing is simply something we can't do. We just have to be effective and efficient and continue to work towards our shared common goal of water savings.
John?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Chris and Bob, great presentation as always. You guys do an absolutely amazing job for making our parks one of the best in the Front Range. Also want to give thanks to you both as well, because at Mayor Pro Tem Ayala and I's Ward 2 community meeting last Thursday, we had a situation in Brandon Place Park, Cherry Lane neighborhood, mine, where Kevin Collins messaged me, and then he sent an email. He is the HOA president of Cherry Lane, mentioning about right by the bridge there where water was running nonstop since 1 p.m. on Thursday, right? And luckily, he wasn't there, but we were. So we started getting to work right away. You reached out to the contractors, and I was reaching out to Kevin because he was getting upset about, we're in a drought, aren't we? Why is this running, right? But I was able to explain to him the valve was broke. We're getting a contractor. We fix it. First thing, by next morning it was fixed. And I also explained to Kevin what you told me last week. It was a learning experience for me that, we had water in Brandon Place Park right now because we put new sod in, because with the improvements. So that has to be done, or we're going to lose that investment, right? So I explained to Kevin that as well. That is the reason why. But we are managing the rest of the city to ensure that we are staying at that 10% threshold. So, gentlemen, once again, and Emily also, thank you for your work on this. And I haven't heard back from Kevin since. Obviously, we handled it very well. And once again, teamwork makes the dream work. Thank you.
Yeah. Comes up again, council member, just let us know.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Okay, I'll give you a little background about Thorn Creek. Thank you for having me here tonight. Thorn Creek, we have about 100 acres of irrigated turf grass. We have a unique pump station that has both potable and non-potable systems in it, which is pretty rare in my industry. 90% of our golf course is watered with non-potable water. 10% of it's watered with potable water. The green surrounds the driving range tee, the clubhouse grounds. So much less is used for the potable. Our management plan here is very similar to parks. We're looking to save 10% on the potable side. On the non-potable side, we're not actually under restriction, but we're trying to save 10% to do our part. Okay. So we do have ways that we can save money on the non-potable side as well. This slide's showing you know, our goal is to try to keep the golf course playable. The non-playable areas are where we're looking to save some water. You can see on the left-hand side, that's along 136 in Washington Street. That's not part of the golf course, so we've reduced it 50%. You can see another picture looking at the golf course clubhouse. Again, that's 50%. You can see where the guy in the white golf shirt is putting. Down below him is the driving range tee, and looking out west is the driving range fairway. The driving range fairway, we've again taken that 50% reduction because it's not really in play for golfers. The picture to the far right shows number 18 fairway, and you can see a little bit of a stressed area off to the left because it's in the rough, and we've restricted some of the water in the rough. It's early in the year right now, and it's hard to get really slides that really are showing what our philosophy is going to be this summer on the golf course, but that gives you a little bit of an idea. Down on the bottom where the yellow flag is, that's a normal looking golf green fairway. That's just normal healthy turf there, which shouldn't change if we don't change any more of the restrictions. I wanted to take a minute to just share a few of the things that we do at the golf course, similar to what Bob mentioned, to conserve water and have healthy turf. One thing that's important, I don't know, I know a few of you golf. I don't know if I don't think you all do, but we have nothing to gain by having a wet, soggy, soft golf course. Golfers like firm, fast conditions. They like green, but it doesn't have to be wet and soft. So we don't want to decrease the enjoyment of the golf course for our guests. We're not interested in having a wet golf course. So we're always trying to conserve water. You can see in the top picture there, we have an on-site weather station. And that weather station gives us a lot of data that we use every day when we talk about programming nighttime irrigation. I'll come back to that in a minute. It's tied into the ETE evapotranspiration number that we get from that. We use on the bottom left, we use what we call wetting agents. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of a product called Revive that some people buy to use in their yard. That's an example of a wetting agent. It helps water go deeper into the soil, gets through the grass, the thatch, the soil, and goes deeper down where you can get more water to the deeper roots and get healthier turf grass. So what we do is we buy wetting agents in 250-gallon drums, and we inject it into the main line of the pump station. So it's going out over the whole course, and it really works well. We use 2 to 3 totes a summer. So that's been a great tool to use. You can see a picture on the left-hand side of one of my guys with a moisture meter, and he's checking the green. We check all the greens almost every day, some fairways, some tees. In general, we use them on the green. So the picture next to it, you can see that number 9.2. So that means the volumetric water content of that green is 9.2. So we have a special number that we use. Normally it's 10. Anything below 10 usually triggers us watering the greens. We only water the greens 2 to 3 times a week. They don't get watered every night like a lot of the rest of the course. So the moisture meters are a great tool to use. Also, we aerate the golf course twice a year, and aeration relieves compaction. You get better root growth. It allows water to go deeper into the soil. Our aeration's a little different though. This is an aeration tine from the aerators that we use. It's solid. It's not hollow like you might see somebody come to your house and do a little 1 or 2 inch plug. But this goes like 8 inches into the soil. When it's all the way down, it kicks and then it comes back up so fast that you can't even see it. And our machine has 18 of these on it, 5 feet wide, and that fractures the soil and allows the water to get down deeper to the roots. So it's something we do twice a year to the whole golf course. Back to the evapotranspiration. So ET is what we live and die by every day when we decide how much water to apply to the golf course. It's basically made up of 2 words, evaporation and transpiration. Evaporation obviously is water evaporating out of the soil and off the surface and not being used by the plant. Transpiration is a term used in botany where a plant takes water in to cool itself down, and then it releases it as a vapor. When we're hot and we drink water, we perspire. Plants go through a transpiration instead of a perspiration process. It's just a little different. But there's a calculation that's used to figure out how much water did we lose in 24 hours. And that's what we look at every night when we go to program the irrigation. We get the ET number from our pump station. And we typically we never water at 100% of ET. Typically in a golf course, you water 60 to 65% of ET. And so that's what we do each night. We also have the ability to have the weather station communicate with the computer irrigation central, and we can set it up to where it's always going to water at 60%, unless we want to fine tune it each night, which a lot of times we do. So these are some areas where I just want to show that we're water conservation minded, always happen. This won't ever change. We've been doing this for years, and we'll continue to do it through the drought. So this is how we're going to achieve our 10%. It's pretty simple. Our potable system, we have the ability in the pump station to turn off the potable system and fill it with potable water instead. And so basically, if every 10th time we use the potable system, if we turn it off and use potable instead, that's going to save 10% right there. Even as an added savings, we've decided to take the water around the clubhouse in 136 and reduce it by 50%. And so we're getting a little additional savings there on top of the 10%. As far as the non-potable system goes, we've identified about 280 sprinkler heads out on the golf course. In areas that we call the far rough. So those are going to be away from the tees, away from the fairways, away from the greens, kind of around the edges. We have almost 2,200 sprinkler heads. So 280 of them we have turned down now to run at 50% of the program. And that's going to help save about 10% of that non-potable water. So what that's going to mean is we're going to look a little drier around the edges, around the clubhouse, the driving range. These areas should come back once we get back to a normal moisture. It's probably worth mentioning there is a fine line between, like Bob shared some of the seeding costs, between less green grass and dead grass. We don't want to get to that point, especially with our non-potable areas not really being restricted. But again, we're trying to do our part, and it's kind of a daily thing. We look at it every day and we spot water where we have to and try to achieve that less green look around the edges, and we should be able to contribute the 10%.
Just wanted to share a little bit, as has been mentioned, there's a lot of coordination between the utility and parks, not just on water usage, but on communication. And so these are some of the signs. The poster on the left is what you'll see at Thorn Creek Golf Course right now. The two signs on the right are signage that will be at various city parks, whether it's a sports turf and we're watering it, to stay green, or if it's a less area that doesn't have as much demand when we're underwatering it, we'll have signage out there just so that customers can understand what Parks is doing and also learn more about the drought. We've been coordinating a lot on social media between the utility and Parks, communicating what our plans are. We'll continue that throughout the summer. Obviously, lots of website activity. And then we will start advertising just Parks' drought response through more of the traditional Parks communication channels, whether it's recreation websites, registrations, at the various events. As I mentioned before, we do have flyers at the rec centers that talk about all of the different responses. We'll have some videos out there where they're describing, what is exactly happening at Parks. So trying to have a coordinated message between the utility and Parks so that customers, one, understand that Parks really is part of the community and doing the same effort that the residents are to save the water. So I just share that. And then just, to the extent we've got so many resources available for residential customers, commercial customers, HOAs to save water. Here's a lot of the efficiency resources that we have. lots of support for commercial and large properties in terms of reducing their water, whether that's irrigation efficiency checks or actual landscape conversions. As I mentioned, we've got a watering guide out there. We've got landscape conversion so people can start to remove some of their high water use bluegrass and transfer it into more native and water-wise landscaping. So lots of programs out there to connect customers with so that they can save some water and save some money as well. So I think that's all we have. I did just want to thank Parks. They've been a great partner and appreciate their support. That's all I have.
Any additional questions? Thank you all, appreciate it. I know it's not easy. All right, right-of-way, streetscape, and entering monuments.
We're gonna do a slight change out with some park staff. So this is just a heads up about some actions that have already happened in terms of right-of-way standards. And then we are gonna ask for council feedback on some future investments in the city. So I'm gonna give this to Chris Sankey to kick us off.
Yeah, thanks, Tansy. So I think you all, council, you remember our Hendrick Wyman, he was here a couple weeks ago with the McAllister master plan. He's gonna take the lead here on the rights of way streetscapes and monument update. And I think as Tansy said, we're gonna ask you for some input here at the conclusion. So Hendrick, take it away.
Thanks, Chris. All right, good evening, council. As you mentioned, I'm here to provide you all with an update on the newly rolled out streetscape palette, as well as request your direction on some proposed entry monuments for the city. Just a simple agenda showing what we're gonna be covering tonight. We're gonna start off by looking at the streetscape stuff, and then we'll move into the proposed entry monument concepts. Purpose, real high level here. We think it's important because right-of-ways create first impressions and are often one of the most visible parts of a community. But it's important to develop standards that enhance safety and are consistently applied, use resources wisely, and portray the community in a positive light. We're here tonight to go over those updated right-of-way materials and then receive feedback on the proposed entry monuments. We want to make sure that those two things tie into one another, that there's good alignment between the two, and that council is supportive of the overall greater vision for Thornton's right-of-ways moving forward. A lot of folks are familiar with the idea of a right-of-way already, but just to cover what we're talking about here specifically tonight, right-of-ways are basically the corridors of publicly owned, publicly dedicated land that allow for essential infrastructure to be put in place, such as roadways, utilities, things like that. They're built and maintained by a variety of public and quasi-public agencies, including the city itself, but also HOAs, developers, and others. The section drawing that you see on the screen there shows a typical cross section of an arterial level right of way here in Thornton. So think your Colorado Boulevards, your 120th, kind of our larger streets here in town. More specifically, the areas that we're talking about tonight are really these areas highlighted in green. So we're talking about the landscape areas, the side paths or sidewalks, the medians, and tree lawns. Some things to keep in mind as we're going over this presentation here. Not all streets have city-owned or maintained right-of-way, so it's not necessarily something we can control or maintain throughout the city, but something that we still strive for. Oftentimes, we see a lot of utilities in these areas, so that can sometimes limit our ability to make surface improvements. Obviously, while these are important, these improvements do have to be considered alongside other city priorities such as parks, stormwater improvements, utilities, and other public services. And just because of their sheer scale, just the number of miles of right-of-way that we have here in the city, there's really significant or can be significant costs to renovate, install, and maintain these types of spaces. So the challenges that are really being addressed here by rolling out these new standards, you can see on the screen there. Right-of-ways in Thornton have developed alongside the city, right? So it's happened over the last 70 years. And currently without strong standards in place to guide their design, we find ourselves with inconsistent applications, aging infrastructure, and substantial hours spent maintaining these spaces. So this is really what we're trying to address here. We wanted to think about, before we started looking at new standards, kind of guiding principles. That would help make sure we're on the right track. So the updated standards will improve safety and access. They will use our critical resources such as water more wisely. It will provide consistency between both publicly and non-publicly maintained right-of-ways. And additionally, we hope that they will go to support a unique visual identity for Thornton and help differentiate us from our surrounding communities. So here are the updated streetscape standards you can see on the screen there. These really pull a lot of inspiration from the surrounding context and landscape of Thornton's location here on the Front Range. There's a big focus on using durable and local materials wherever possible to help reduce the ongoing maintenance need. Just want to point out, these are updated standards that will apply to both CIP projects that the city is operating, as well as private development projects around the city. Another point to mention is that the newly created transportation department, which is part of the citywide reorganization process, is going to be working over the coming months to define levels of service and create prioritization lists for right-of-ways throughout the city as they are created and work towards that. So that's the palette that we're working with. You can see here on this next slide some pictures of what that streetscape starts to look like when it's actually installed. These are a couple locations around town. You're probably familiar with some of these already. And next, we're going to move into entry monuments and kind of tie that into the streetscape palette. So
Real
entry
quick.
monuments, the city
Real
currently
quick
has.
Before you continue,
Yeah, sure.
Justin?
The question about the streetscape design standards. How much are these all gonna be incorporated into the Washington Street streetscape project that's being rolled out in these few years?
Yeah, so once we get the design standards kind of in place, and we were working with our partners in infrastructure and city development to make sure that these new standards are part of that development package. Yeah.
I just had a question on that as well. Are you incorporating any native trees in the right of way streetscape?
We're looking at native adapted trees for the most part. Native trees really down here on the Front Range is pretty limiting, right? So we do want to have trees that are water wise and drought tolerant for these types of years that we're in right now. But we also want trees that look nice and aren't high maintenance, aren't soft wooded, aren't going to be dropping a lot of branches. So we'll continue to work with our forestry team, who has a great selection of trees that they feel like are very hardy and do well in Thornton, to come up with a final tree list. But there may be a couple natives on there, but really that list is likely to have some cultivars that come from other places but do well here in the Colorado climate.
Yeah, maybe like ponderosa pine is an example that seems to be
Sure.
already here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Some evergreens that could be incorporated into that. Deciduous, we have to think about the maintenance implications. Certainly don't want fruit trees that are gonna be dropping fruit, things like that, or creating any kind of hazards. But yeah, absolutely. We want it to look the nicest it possibly can, with requiring the smallest amount of input possible.
And that's just been feedback that I've received from residents. They've asked about, these right of ways and seeing kind of the xeriscaping happening.
Yeah.
And losing trees or adding trees would be preferred to create shade and just for aesthetics purposes. So it's good to hear that you're incorporating that, because I didn't really see it on the streetscape.
Right.
Guidance
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
But
that's
you
fair.
are- that's good news.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to be mitigating that urban heat island effect as much as possible, right? With those trees, adding the shade, like you mentioned. Obviously, along roadways is a big aspect of that. So we'll do that wherever possible. Occasionally, we do run into a situation where there's so many utilities alongside the roadside that trees and their root systems are difficult to find areas to plant those in. But outside of that, certainly in medians and wherever else, we're very pro tree as well up at Park. So we'll definitely be looking at all those options also.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good deal. Anything else on streetscape stuff before we move into entry monuments? So entry monuments tied directly into streetscapes. Currently, the city has 14 large scale entry monuments around the city. These can primarily be found on the west and south sides of the city at major entry points and along arterials. Of these existing monuments, 3 have been identified as high priority for being replaced or installing new entry monuments. You can see those on the right-hand side of the slide. Our initial focus is to build a monument at Thornton Parkway, on the east side of I-25 to go along with the recently completed median work. The Transportation Department, once operational, will also be exploring if there's need for additional entry monument locations at other areas around the city once they're fully formed. I have lost my connection. Is there a area? Oh, there we go. Should do. So the two families of entry monuments that are going to be presented tonight are really the refined version of about 16 months of internal city stakeholder input and concept development. We're currently contracted with a local sign design and manufacturing business, Arapahoe Sign Arts, to finalize the site-specific designs and construction level documents based on council's feedback tonight. So the first concept. Family of entry monuments shown here use durable and unique materials that complement and build off the streetscape materials presented earlier. We have tall Corten steel pillars with built-in changeable LED light elements. Those sit firmly on top of a base of rammed earth. We also have a black painted steel that's used to capture the Thornton lettering on the side there and also provide an illuminated logo box for easy legibility at night. These materials are also carried over into a smaller version that you see there in the middle part of the slide and can also be used in a more horizontal type signage to make sure that we're creating that unifying character across locations. Here's a render showing that taller pylon option. If it were to be installed out on Thornton Parkway in the medians there, you can see this location in particular is really well suited to a tall vertical style sign. Here's a nighttime render of that same look at the sign, so you can kind of get a sense of the lighted elements. Concept 2 here. So concept 2 family of signs is a bit more contemporary style, pulls colorful inspiration from the city's new branding and logo. A playful painted or dyed acrylic angular structure hugs a tall black steel pillar, which holds the Thornton lettering. These elements are once again anchored to the rammed earth base, which creates a canvas for an engraved city logo that you can see there. You can see how this style can once again be interpreted for a smaller structure in the middle and also more horizontal type installations. I do want to point out that when we presented these two concepts to Pozak and Tashko, that this concept family was a very slight favorite over concept 1. Daytime render showing that taller pylon out there at Thornton Parkway in the median. And a nighttime render showing the lighting elements. We think we could also light that acrylic structure from the inside if that were to be desired. So really what we're looking for this evening is to, capture any feedback and comments that council may have and really look for direction for how to proceed with this effort. We could either go with concept 1, concept 2. We could certainly go back to the drawing board and recommend that additional concepts be developed as well. And otherwise, I do want to point out cost-wise at this point, costs are very similar for both of these styles of signs, both from an installation and an ongoing maintenance perspective. Not a big change in costs. And we're here happy to answer any questions that you might have before collecting feedback.
Okay, Roberta and Chris, I think you both pushed your buttons. Is that correct? Or your light didn't light up, but I saw you both go for it. So I'll have Roberta, then Chris, then Cherish.
I like concept 2 the most. I've heard a lot of feedback about both, but I like concept 2. And one of the interesting things is this looks a lot like the piece at Trailwinds called Aperture that was selected by Tashko. So I think it's kind of super cool that it's coming back around to the same style. That piece is specifically was and it could be kind of cool just to look and see, because I don't remember the artist's name. I remember working on that many years ago, but I don't remember the artist's name, but it was lit from the inside, and that specific artist did a lot of work throughout the country in different cities, and I think Las Vegas and quite a few cities. But it looks very similar to that, and so it's kind of cool and whimsical and something that I really enjoyed for the front of Trailwinds. So it's kind of nice that it's coming back around as far as a style. I'm not sure how this company or is this like a company that's doing it?
Yeah, they're kind of a design build firm, so
Yeah,
they're doing.
kinda interesting.
So, install.
Cause it'd be kind of cool to see how they'd be able to light it from the inside as opposed to the reflected light, but
Sure.
either way, it looks really good.
Sure, thank you. And we'll be happy to reach out to Lisa and her team and see if we can get that artist information too.
Yeah, it was close to probably over 5 years now, so.
Okay.
Chris?
I do like points that Councilmember Ayala just brought up and how it does tie to trail wings. However, given that we've already started some of the installation of artwork right here in front of City Hall with that called that aged metal or that weathered metal. There's a certain name for it, I can't remember.
Porch steel.
Rust.
We call it patina, but yeah.
Patina.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's why I'm gonna go with concept one. It's just, I think that would conform kind of what we already have in Thornton Parkway being our staple roadway in front of City Hall, and I like conformity too. I don't not like concept two, but I'm gonna try to go for the cleaner look. So my vote's concept one.
Right.
Yeah, it's like,
I like concept one, except for I would like to see the lettering though. Say Thornton down.
Yeah, we've had quite a bit of feedback on that lettering, so I think we'll definitely address that if that were the concept to be moved forward.
Justin?
Yeah, I like both designs. They're both very cool and love to see either one. So, but I did reach out through Nextdoor, and I know Drew did as well. There were a ton of responses, and I think there was what I could tell, a majority of these people liked one. So in that regards, I'm gonna go with one because they both look great. I can go with either one, but that's what I hear from around town, all different parts of town.
Sure.
I'm leaning towards one, but I'm curious about costs. Can you dig into that some more with specifics?
Yeah, so right now we have order of magnitude costs put together for the tallest pylon option up there for both concepts. So that is likely the most expensive of either family's 3 signs. Right now, the cost all in, so this is with traffic control, materials, labor, all that. That tall pylon is somewhere between $150,000 and $175,000 to install.
And the second one?
We don't have costs put together for any of the smaller elements. We could assume that the price will go down, but to what extent, we don't know exactly right. I think, are you asking are you saying 175 for each of the tall ones? Yes, each of the tall ones would be in that ballpark. Your question. Yeah, both in concept one and concept two, the 2 tallest ones would be about in that same ballpark.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where is the funding coming from?
The funding for this particular project is from funds that were remaining from the median improvements project.
Again, to clarify, that's the only funded
Sure, yes.
project at this point, just that one.
Okay, so not grant funded, it's general fund.
Yeah, follow up to
Got it.
general fund or capital improvement fund?
It was capital, but general
General capital.
capital, yeah.
Is there a way, I'm leaning towards one, but I'm also totally fine cutting that thing in half. And just having like the bottom section where it's literally just the black sign logo and the word Thornton.
Yeah.
Is there a way to analyze like what that price difference would be and if it's significant? Because I do want to balance. We had a lot of comments. I think we had around 500 or so between the two of us. Which is really interesting to see, but
yeah,
I think, there were a few people that are like, why in the world are we spending money on this? So I think trying to find a balance of like, hey, we want something nice, but also saying this is probably like the most cost effective version.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, I think there's a fair bit of cost with the sheer height of it, with changes, the stuff that you can't see right below the grade as well.
Right.
So we can certainly work with our partners over at Arapahoe Sign Arts to see if we can take that concept and kind of right size it and bring that cost down a bit.
That would be my recommendation if we should look at that.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, Dave?
Drew took my questions on cost, but I'm fine with one.
John?
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I love both concepts. I was checked out some of Drew and Justin's, on their next door posts as well, and it's kind of like, there's a lot of folks like concept 2, there are a lot of folks like concept 1. But I do tend to agree with Mayor Pro Tem Ayala about concept 2, like with the compliment to trail winds. But I kind of also like something a little more cleaner, if you will. Cost doesn't have nothing to do with it in this case, but I do think maybe with I like concept 1. I'll go and say that, but still, I'm not sure, like the Thornton lettering, maybe we can take that out or not. I mean, if it's not much of a difference, then it doesn't matter, but I do like the logo on the bottom. I like that, and it's very prevalent both day and night. So that would be, obviously would be our Thornton, without Thornton, obviously. I would like to see maybe we can do without the Thornton lettering on one, but I can live with it too, so. If it's a significant difference, then maybe take Thornton out, but if not, then we'll probably keep it, but I like to see like both.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Roberta? Just something to think about, because I know that there's posts on social media and people have a lot of opinions when they see this stuff and they think about cost, but keep in mind, like over the last 2 years I've been on council, I've heard a lot of complaints about signage and how crappy it looks around town, so it's gonna get money, it's gonna cost money to replace it and make it look better. I know from traveling in and out of Thornton in different directions, one thing I'll say is like on 120th, for example, there's a very huge sign that says like the city of Thornton. It's big. It's very big. I mean, if we replace it with something puny, people are gonna be super disappointed. And so they'll come at us now with cost complaints, but then they'll come at us with you cheaped out and it looks like crap complaints. So we gotta take all of like what's said in the moment with a grain of salt, because people will start to have different ideology once they see something in place where we decide to go cheaper on the cost, and then it looks sad. Now having live in a neighborhood that has very old neighborhood signage, I've been one of those complainers because our signs don't get replaced by an HOA, our signs get replaced by the city. And I've seen, the work and care that goes into that. I've also seen people crash into them and then they have to be replaced again, and that's really unfortunate. So signage has been an issue, whether it's for the city of Thornton or for the different signs around our city for neighborhoods, businesses, everything. It's just something to keep in mind, because I think I did see the folks complaining. A lot of folks on Nextdoor will have different complaints, they will on different social media outlets, but if we replace a big, huge monumental sign like the white one on 120th with a little weird thing, people are gonna get sad, so just something to put out there.
All right, I have Chris, then Justin, then Drew. Chris?
I just had an idea, to help with cost for Drew's comments. That black post with the black, Thornton lettering, if that's, steel fabrication and welding, I know we were having some of our other city art being done by Future Forward. Is it possible just to have them build that black pole with the Thornton letters, and something that we can add to it, gives the students a project, definitely lowers costs? Because welding and steel fab is, if you do iron railing and stuff, it's insane how expensive that stuff is. But, maybe that's an area where we can shave a few dollars and kids can then contribute to the signage process, and we save money in the process. So just an idea.
Justin?
My question is about, so we've got 14 of these existing monuments. Do we have a plan to replace all 14 of them, or if one potential way we're talking about costs is don't replace all of 14, 14 times 175,000, talking millions of dollars on welcome. I don't know if I could justify millions of dollars on welcome monuments. I like having welcome monuments, but 14 of them is a lot. So I don't necessarily want to cheap out on them. And it's interesting, using child labor to save costs, but I'm just kidding. I get it. Good job. So I actually like that idea. I just couldn't help it with that joke. But yeah, want to know like what the rollout plan is, all 14, or are we gonna do, I'd imagine it's over several years, stuff like that.
So Councilmember Martinez.
Yeah, I'll try to grab this one. So I do think, Kendrick shared, we will be coming back to you at a later date with sort of a more intentional approach to planning for streetscapes across the city and prioritizing that. I think entry signs would be part of that. So certainly, I think we do recognize we've got a lot of deferred work in terms of our streetscapes. And it's gonna take years of sort of capital planning to do that. I think some of the goal with these concepts, one, I think in that process, we could determine where are the places we consider as major entryways into the city, where we want to do that branding. And I do think the intent here with this flexible piece is that we could use lower cost methods in certain kinds of places. So I think some of that that would emerge is sort of what's the right kind of signage in the right context at the right cost. So we don't have that yet, but I think that very much is an intent in terms of approaching streetscape and right-of-way projects going forward. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, it is.
I think the idea is the concept that we're looking for that blends with the ideas that we have. So this may or may not be what it actually looks like when that is ready. I'm sure it will come to council, but the concept between these two, and right now concept one is in the lead. I have Drew and then John. And then I think we'll wrap up the conversation because we have consensus already.
Yeah, great points. Do like your idea, Chris. Love to see how we can incorporate that, if that's even a possibility. I won't echo what Justin says about that. But I would say that, I mean, size wise, like the size should be proportional to what's there, and I understand that. I'm saying like the black part, like the word and the logo, actually is very nice and clean and attractive. And if it was just that, I would be okay with that. And I think that sets a good standard. It's simple, it's timeless, and classic. And yeah, so I think going with that would be ideal. And I would hope that without all the steel, it'd be a lot cheaper. And I'm happy to draw it out too, if that helps.
I think that's a lower level than we as council need to be at.
I mean, it would be a lot of fun.
I can picture what you're saying though. I think, and that's the nice part of both these concepts is they have these kind of kit of parts, if you will, that you can kind of piece together and make for site appropriate and cost effective different types of signage like Tansy was mentioning.
And I had a construction guy point out to me that the panels on the coloring, the one like the Minecraft one on the left, and then like I'll call like the caterpillar on the right. He said that the sun is going to wear down that material very quickly, and so very quickly it'll need to be replaced. And so that's an unanticipated maintenance cost that we thrown in. They'll add to it much more than just the basic black sign with that kind of stone background. So something else to consider in the future. If we got rid of the colored element and just had the steel, then we had children helping build. Maybe there's a good balance there as Chris suggested.
All right, John, wrap us up.
Oh, yes, and I'll be quick. So, obviously I want concept one, but I envisioned it without the Thornton on the side. That's too plain and it's kind of cheap. I mean, Madam Mayor Pro Tem brought up a point there. So I think we should just keep like it is. I like that. Pertaining to the monument sign though, that Roberta and, concerns about, we want to make sure they're big. Concept one, that monument sign will be bigger than concept two. So I'll wrap up on that.
So we have consensus on concept one as a move forward to figure out what to do with it from there.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good night.
All right, organizational review.
Hey, this is me and I'm between you and a snowball fight or something. So I'll try to move quickly through this. So I did want to just take a chance to connect with the council. Over the last month, we've done a lot of specific outreach to specific individuals and work groups that are gonna be impacted by the next phase of implementation of the org review. And then last week, we had an all-employee call. So want to take an opportunity to make sure that the council is in the loop with those. We will briefly hit background. There's lots of materials that are available for the public in previous presentations, so won't go into background extensively, but we'll spend most of the time talking about where are we in the current evaluation and implementation, and then we'll talk briefly about next steps. I won't spend much time on this slide. We've condensed some of the background information that you've seen in the past, but ultimately, just as a reminder for people that the council and people that might be plugging into this for the first time, we did have a third-party consultant that gave us some recommendations last October. We came to the council in January with an implementation recommendation. That broader study really talked about how we could realign the city's organization structure to align to our priorities. And then the implementation plan was tried to lift out and sequence our implementation in a way that advanced strategic plan priorities. Those two bullets is where I'm going to spend the bulk of my time tonight. There were other things in the report around culture, policies, procedures, role clarity, things like that, that we'll continue to work on as well. So this is the future department organization chart. This does have some slight refinement from the original recommendation of Black Line, but this is the organization chart that we are moving forward into the future. This slide, you did see these evaluation phases in the January presentation. So phase 1 through 4, you saw what has been added to this slide is demonstrating sort of how we are moving forward in a more intentional way with specific departments. So again, we're sort of working through the detailed organization structure, our detailed communication plans in smaller pieces so that we can be really intentional with that specific design. So you'll see that under phase 3, that chart will show that the functional alignment, so that's essentially what bucket of services go in the department. We have completed that for most departments, the 2 outstanding. We've got a few decisions to make with regard to allocation of services between finance and the engineering and capital projects department that are still ongoing. On the bottom, you'll see under phase 4. So again, our Q2 implementations, we do have those detailed org charts and employee impacts identified for those. And then we're continuing to work on those things that are going to be moving forward in Q3. There is one change that you'll see here for transportation, and you'll see this reflected on another slide. We are not going to try to make changes to right-of-way alignments during this significant growing season. So we have pushed that into the kind of Q3, Q4 to consolidate our mowing and other kinds of operations. So that those will stay in parks until we get to a place that makes more operational sense to make changes to that department. The other change you'll see here is now we are reflecting phase 5, which is implementation, because we are now moving into phase 5 implementation for some departments. At this point, we do have a better sense of what are actually the on-the-ground impacts of some of the changes that we are looking at. So we have started to identify places where we might have references in policies or other things that are out of alignment now with what the way the structure is looking. So a good example of that is we have positions that are classified as either career service or excluded. now that we have changed the organization structure, those definitions no longer really work. So it's things like that that we're working on as we're doing that. As I think, you know, we have some offices and some departments. We're going to define some of those terms more clearly to serve us going forward. In terms of employee impacts to date, we are going to have quite a few employees that are going to be impacted by either a new supervisor, they're going to be directly working for a new supervisor, or they might be aligned to a different part of the organization structure within a department, or they may be moving from one department to another. So those kind of impacts are fairly common to our employees. We are going to have some individuals based on the changes in the structure that are going to either move from career service into excluded or from being excluded from the career service into the career service. So we will have some of those impacts. That's less common in terms of an impact. And then we will be reclassifying quite a number of positions. And so in many cases, that's what we're considering a lateral shift. So somebody might have some slightly different job responsibilities. There might be some piece of their job responsibilities are staying the same, some are changing. Some people might be shifting into sort of a different area of focus. But when we say lateral, we essentially are meaning they have generally the same level of responsibility. They're relying on the same level of skills. And from a market pay perspective, there's not a compensation impact. So when we say lateral, that's what we mean. We do have very rare circumstances where people are taking on additional responsibility or moving into a position that would have a different market pay impact. So under our code, those are considered promotion. And then some will be considered demotion. So again, somebody might end up with lesser responsibility, or they may be moving into a role that when it comes to the market would has a lower market value in terms of it. When we use the term demotion, and we've been really clear with our organization, these are not performance-based changes. So these are structural changes. And so the term, it's really a reclassification, but some individuals will have either their future earning potential or in very rare cases, their pay reduced as a result. All of the reclassifications is a very rare circumstance. And when we talk about the Q2 changes that are upcoming, we have already engaged with all of the employees that will be impacted by a reclassification. So those individuals that will be impacted in that way know that that's coming.
Before you move on,
Yes.
I have Justin and then Roberta.
Okay. Under the reclassifications so you did answer one of my questions that their pay will change along with the title as well.
In very rare circumstances. So our code actually allows us if somebody is demoted, but it's not for a performance reason, we do have an allowance in the code to pay somebody up to 7% outside of the range. And so some individuals will get some protection in terms of their existing pay because they'll still be in that 7% buffer.
Okay.
Now, in those cases, there still is an impact because as we do pay increases and those kinds of things, we pay those out as lump sums. They don't add to the base until they get back into the range. So it will be a very rare, minimal circumstance, somebody that actually loses pay. So their pay range their actual pay would have to be more than 7% above the range that they're going to. But there are circumstances where we expect actual pay impacts, but those are going to be very rare.
Okay, and then my second question is, so you didn't mention there were no reductions in roles or elimination of roles as part of this. Is that right?
At this point, we have not identified any layoffs, so no, and we don't perceive that that will be the case going forward. We haven't worked through detailed org charts for all of the departments, but given what we know at this point, we don't anticipate any layoffs. And it is worth noting the reclassification impacts to this point and likely going forward have impacted managerial or program manager kinds of roles. So we have not identified those kind of impacts for more frontline service providers.
Was that just out of scope from the very beginning, or was that something that you analyzed and determined that no, we're not going to do that?
I think a lot of it is just the nature of the kinds of changes that we're making have more impacts on those work groups. So, we're not changing levels of service or service lines. Some of this is about opportunities for more visibility, for more collaboration or coordination, recognition of sort of work groups that make sense. And so in that way, some of the functional work that is happening is still going to happen. It's just happening in a different alignment. So it didn't impact as much those individuals that are frontline service providers.
Okay, thanks.
When you actually have the numbers of people who were affected by this, can you just let us know the number of people that might have, I'm more concerned about, the demotion and rare circumstance. That's just an impact to people's, pocketbook for the household or whatever. And then secondly, you said there were no rifts, right? There wasn't going to be as far, if that does happen to occur, would you let us know?
Absolutely. And again,
Possible, because that kind of stuff really
yeah,
gets to triggering the community and, the workforce and can lead to huge morale issues, so just.
yeah. And at this point, and we did share on the all employee call that there, we have not identified any and the Q2 implementation changes and don't anticipate any based on, again, we don't have the final work for those remaining departments completely worked through here, but we started to get an idea, and I feel with a fair degree of confidence to say that we won't have eliminations of employees.
Oh, I had one other question. Was there a change in the overall FTE numbers? Because you said there were some that you said something about those type of job classifications. Was there a change from FTE to,
We haven't completed all of that yet, so I think we shared with you in January, we had accumulated 12 vacant positions to allocate towards the implementation of this plan. The value of positions is different, so our commitment to the council was to try to make this first phase both cost neutral and position neutral. And so we're still working through that, but yes, we won't be adding positions through this process. Some of the positions that we were holding, we are replacing with higher value positions. So it may not be a 1-for-1. We're still working.
I think the concern with people in labor usually is that like you change the organization. I always hear this, there's a certain organization I'm thinking of in my head right now. They change it and then you end up with more admin people, but less frontline workers. And so it makes a shift of like, oh, we lost the person at the front desk and, we need that customer facing support because it's a rough day. These are the people that get paid the least in the whole organization, yet they're busting their butt, but you have 2 more really high paid administrators. So can you also let us know when you end up with this, if we end up losing any FTE on the frontline worker type of area and then gaining what that balance looks like as well?
We can share the positions that we held for this conversion. I think they are fairly well distributed through different kinds of departments and different kinds of functions.
And
we can
from
share
like
that.
across the scope from frontline worker, right
That's right.
trial to admin, okay.
That's right. Okay, I'm gonna jump back forward here and we will provide that information about demotions. I guess just a clarification, is that a touch point that the council would like at each phase or when we get through with the completion of the entire project.
I think completion would be useful. I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Is that all right with the council?
Yeah.
Right, John?
Yeah, thank you, Madam City Manager, for the presentation so far. Yeah, I mirror, Mayor Pro Tem, I always comments as well. We need the reorganization, but we want to make sure that the frontline workers are not the ones that are going to be the most, negatively impacted by this. Thank you for clarifying that there won't be any RIFs or layoffs. That's very important to me. So, but as I will mirror, once again, Mayor Pro Tem, please, keep us informed on how the process is going. Thank you, ma'am.
So you have seen this chart before in January. So this is the implementation plan. Just a reminder about what you're seeing. The chevrons that run across the top, that's our prioritization in terms of recruitment and hiring. And in every case, you're going to see recruitment and hiring leading and then structural changes happening behind that. So the goal of that is so that particularly for the new departments, we can get those leaders in place and they can help manage that implementation and change management as we start to put together those departments. There are a few changes on this chart from what you saw before. One I already pointed out to you. So you'll see now in that Q3, Q4 item that we have included that right away we have deferred. The other is finance. We previously had anticipated that we might make some realignments in the finance department in Q2, and that has been realigned to Q3. Again, we still have some decisions to make in terms of alignment there. The other piece that has been added to this chart, you'll see for 2027, we are starting, I think one of the things that we have shared with you, we do intend to bring the 2027 budget to you reflecting these new departments. And so as we work on the budget, we will be moving these constructs into play and reallocating those resources in that way. And then we are beginning to understand other back-end systems. So everything like internal controls, how our internal systems reflect that organization structure. And so, that work will continue. I'll pause here. All right, so we're going to spend a little bit of time just on where are we with those Q1 and Q2 plans. So Q1, we have now completed. So the recruitments that we intended to do in Q1, we have completed. So Brett Henry and Jessica Prosser have stepped into assistant city manager roles, and you have gotten lots of face time with Kevin Forget, who has stepped into our strategic initiatives position. And we have actually accelerated quite a number of the supervisory realignments in the city manager's office. And so all of the departments that you see listed in terms of supervisory realignments have shifted to direct reports from the city manager to a deputy or an assistant city manager to both distribute the workload a little bit and provide a little higher level of support and assistance to the departments. In terms of Q2, we are ready to go. So I think I shared with the council, the community programs director has now been posted. So that is an active recruitment at this point. We did do a solicitation and considered outside professional recruitment services for all three of these services. We have all three of the searches. We have calibrated based on our internal resources and knowledge, the use of those external recruitment resources. So given Jessica's background and network, we did choose to do the community programs with internal resources. We are not using a recruitment firm for that recruitment. For the transportation director, we'll use a recruiting firm in a limited way to help with candidate sourcing, but we'll do most of the candidate evaluation and negotiation internally. And with the CIO, given the unique technical basis of that role, we'll be using a recruitment partner for all parts of that process. We have selected our recruiting partner for these. It's a firm called Strategic Government Resources. They go by SGR. It's a national firm that is very well known. And so we will hopefully, I think we've kicked off the recruitment with the recruiters for both the CIO and transportation directors. So I would expect getting information to you probably within a week or 10 days that those positions will be in active recruitment. I've done a couple of programmatic alignments. So our wellness function has moved to human resources, and we do have an interim director in place in our management services department. With that interim transition, we did take that opportunity and shifted municipal court early to the city manager's office. So the municipal court administrator is now a direct report to me in the city manager's office. We do have some pending structural organizational changes that we think will happen still in Q2, potentially bridging into Q3. The information technology department will become a department. Right now, IT is a function in management services. Once we have a CIO in place, that will become a freestanding department, and that will shift, and the CIO will be a direct report. We'll wait until that recruitment has been completed and that person is placed to make that change. And we had intended to move risk management to human resources in Q2. Given the transitional period in management services, want to leave some more leadership resiliency to support the interim director there. So we have deferred the change to risk management until we get that transition through. We'll give an example of some of the functional org charts. So these are the 3 departments again for which that is the change. So impacted, the key over there on the right, this could be one or more of those impacts in a work group. So when something is green, it doesn't mean that all of these things are happening. It just means somebody in that line was impacted in one of those ways. And so in this particular case, we have taken the opportunity to realign. Cybersecurity right now is managed along with our network engineering and that is actually it's infrastructure and networks. That also includes cyber right now. We are pulling cyber out on its own, and so that will allow us to incrementally increase dedicated resources for cybersecurity. Technical support right now is a direct report to the CIO. We wanted to minimize direct reports to the CIO. In many other cases, that is managed along with sort of the support system of the department. So again, where we have those impacts, it could be some of those individuals are just in a new realignment working in a new work group. Some individuals are seeing reclassifications in this area. The next couple of charts get a little harder to see. Everything is green because these are new departments. So virtually all of these individuals are moving from a different department into this department. So community engagement, volunteer, and community connections now are all functions in parks that will come into the community programs department, and code compliance is in planning. And so this is all green because all of these individuals are going to be in a new alignment. And we do have some individuals that will also be impacted by status changes, so career service and excluded changes, and some impacts in terms of reclassification. And this is the new transportation department. And so again, this is a new department, and so all of these functions are shifting from parks, planning, or infrastructure. Similarly here, most individuals are just being impacted by alignment, but we do have individuals that are being impacted by their status changes or by a classification. In terms of what's coming next, again, we're continuing to communicate with the individuals that are being impacted by Q2 changes in IT transportation and community programs. Again, we're looking forward to starting the recruitments for those director positions. We're continuing to be aggressive with employee communication. So we have an all-employee call. We have an intranet site where we are providing frequently asked questions, copies of presentations, those kinds of things. We are going to be working to complete those phase 3 and phase 4 evaluations. So that's again those functional and detailed org charts and evaluation of detailed employee impacts. And we'll be preparing for communication for those Q3 and Q4 changes. As we get closer to some of these departments actually standing up, we will then start to transition into public education about how to communicate. Hopefully, we do believe that the org chart going forward will be beneficial and potentially more intuitive for the public to predict who they might call for certain kinds of service requests. But we certainly will be putting together a public communication plan. That I can answer any questions.
Devin.
What is the net new headcount that we're looking at for the org chart changes, the new divisions that are being broken into?
None, yeah. So we held vacant positions. We held 12 vacant positions. Again, we haven't finalized all of the detailed org charts, but the commitment has been not to add any new positions through this process.
So with the breakup and the division of everything that's kind of through there, do we feel that we have the expertise in all the new areas that are going to be needed in that? Or that the 12 headcount will be enough to be able to fill all those roles? Specifically when you think about things like the IT side, that's a very large difference in expertise and kind of knowledge base from technical support to cybersecurity or. Yeah,
so hopefully this will answer the question. If not, redirect me. So for all the new director roles, so we have a number of individuals in interim appointments and director roles, and then we'll have a number of new vacant director roles. We will be doing national competitive searches for all of the director roles. So we won't be reclassifying existing employees into any of the director roles to ensure that we have individuals with the experience and skill sets to support the vision of these new departments.
Other questions? I guess not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Any board or committee reports?
Yes.
John?
Yes, thank you. So of course, Councilmember Martinez and I, we have our monthly NADA Board of Directors meeting for April. So we as a board, we approved the guiding policies 2026 document in addition to approving the March meeting minutes. Also, Elise Jones is no longer the District 4 Transportation Commissioner for CDOT. The nominee is now Carl Castillo. He is from Boulder. And he was introduced to us and he addressed the board indicating he had no specific agenda, but to have a safe, reliable mobility for the transportation network, and will look to build relationships and along with pragmatic solutions. So I think this is definitely, in my view, a breath of fresh air for our board. And I'm gonna go to the next reason why the previous director was contentious. We were briefed on bus tank funding and operations by Paul Disrocher. He's the Director of Division of Transit and Rail DTR for CDOT. He indicated bus tank funding is not, I repeat, not tied to the I-25 10-year plan. So that's a big win for us. for NADA, but also for the city of Thornton as well, because that has been a very contentious topic this year. So that is a big relief. The I-25 and Colorado 7 interim mobility hub should be completed in July, August this year, and DTR will activate the bus tank stops at the same time the interchange is open. Paul indicated his staff will work with the B2P Flyer startup to synchronize the times both the B2P Flyer and Mustang buses are at the mobility hub. And Paul briefly discussed possible mountain rail stops in the NADA area. And I will defer to Chairman and Councilmember Martinez for the other part. About the Clean Transit Enterprise. Clean Transit Enterprise, did that mean take place?
I didn't, you covered all the notes that I had.
Okay, excellent. And then, okay, my apologies then. Okay, my apologies. Okay, that's all we have for NADA then. Thank you.
I'm good, because he said everything.
You
else.
covered it?
Yeah.
Anyone else? Chris?
Highway 7, the Quebec, are important for Ward 3 guys. Next month, they'll go into design for Highway 7 and Holly Street. And Highway 7 and Quebec Street for design on that. So that's what's important for
I'm sure Todd will give you some info back on it. tonight.
They should have let me when it happens.
The AC Rep BAP committee meeting was canceled, and the AC Rep Board of Directors meeting, they are working on a strategic plan for the next few years. Those are the big things. All right, any discussion items? Roberta?
Just two, the first one is, we did all of our May stuff, but I wanted to add Teacher Appreciation Week, it's this week. But we didn't get to do it, so we do it next week.
Any objection?
Okay, and then the second one is, so yeah, I saw that we have the item scheduled on June 2nd to discuss the city council travel plan, following up on Councilmember Martinez's request. And I've been thinking about some other policies we might want to like revisit over the next year here. And I reviewed policy 4.2 regarding the city policy direction. And this one hasn't been updated since 2005. So while I think we pretty much follow the spirit of the policy, it seems like there could be some refinements made that would reflect our current practices and provide some better guidance to both the city staff in dealing with us and the members of the city council. Similar to our work with the travel policy, I want to learn more about our peer practices, so the other cities that we have and what they do and ways that we might be able to improve our policy in that area.
Any objection?
Just clarification, you're asking about the policy around how we give direction to staff.
Mhm.
Okay.
Any objection?
Is that 4.2?
Mhm.
Because mine says 5.6. So I don't know if you're reading the old book.
It might be one of them. I don't
Is it from the
know.
charter or from the code?
It's from
This is from your, I think you're referring to your council policy.
council policy, city policy.
The charter
Policy direction.
listed in 5.6 as well.
Yeah, so this I think is the ordinance that we have for city council policies and direction.
So.
And I can kind of give you.
Well, we can't change the charter without a vote.
Yeah, we can't.
So we don't change our rules.
So city council policy direction, policy 4.2, legislative history, CD 2005-206. The purpose of this policy is established process for determining the course of direction relating to issues, concerns, ideas, concepts that are discussed by city council planning sessions and council updates. Ooh, I sounded like Kristen. That was kind.
You weren't asking us.
So yeah, that one.
All right, I'm not hearing any objection. We can check and see what other cities are doing and see if we can update the policy to be more current. Anything else, Roberta?
That's it for me.
Anyone else? You sure, Justin?
Sure.
All right, any state legislative updates? Not yet. I got another seat left.
Silly.
There's another 13. All right, thank you all very much.